This is episode number 406 of WPwatercooler, WordPress Performance Optimization. Brought to you in part by us over at WPwatercooler.com/store. Go buy yourself some merch. We'd appreciate it. And by InMotion Hosting. Check out InMotion Hosting for 24/7 support and affordable prices. Learn how you can launch your website in minutes at InMotionHosting.com. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me at Jason Tucker on the Twitters.
And it's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mullenweg, back at it again on the world's most influential WordPress podcast.
Go over and leave us a review on that podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to amazing podcasts like ours. And go hang out with us in Discord. Go to Discord over on WPwatercooler.com/Discord. If you notice, Cosper, I got rid of those, that dead weight. The dead weight we always drag around every week. Steve, got rid of him. Say, got rid of her. It's just us. It's the Jasons. How's it going, Cosper? How you doing today?
Yeah. Tucker in the morning.
Exactly.
I'm good, man. I'm ready for some performance. Get my hands elbows deep in WordPress performance.
Awesome, man. It's always good to have you hanging out with me. So today, WordPress performance. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can get into with WordPress performance, and I'm trying to figure out where to start with this. Is it installing 900 WordPress plugins and then thinking, what's wrong with my website? Is it installing, WooCommerce and then forgetting about it and then removing it and things are still jacked up? Like, what is it? Where is it somebody should start with performance?
To every, I'm gonna say every, but honestly, like months to a year, just like how you're supposed to, if you own a house or rent or whatever, if you have like central air and heating, you're supposed to change your air filters like every 6 months. I like to go into my database and clear out the stuff that I don't need. At least in a perfect world, I would do it every quarter. But I mean, honestly, life happens, things just get in the way. And so I go in and I look and I know, Jason, you're a lot like me, where you see a new plugin and you want to install it, you want to test it out. And so you put it on the site that you've had. JasonCosper.com, like my personal website, has been a thing. Like I think originally it was like a William Gibson reference, onosendai.info, and in 2005, and I've just kept going with that install for all of these years. And it's like, okay, this new plugin comes along, I'll try it. It adds tables, not always, but it'll add tables. It'll add stuff to WP options. It will, add new post meta and things like that. And it's like, you got to kind of go in and trim that stuff up. I don't believe personally, there are a lot of plugins out there that'll help you optimize your site and get rid of a lot of that cruft. I know one that people often fall back on is auto optimize,
right?
Which it works great. Like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it tends to actually, do a lot of good optimizations to the site that do help. I think that database cleaning is in there.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Yeah. It's been so long. I just run personal MySQL queries that I've accumulated over the years that go through and clean out orphaned post meta. So if there's like a post that I've deleted and there's all this post meta attached to it, sometimes revisions like the post meta, like a revision comes along, it drops out of the database because I only save like the past 2 revisions of my post. I'm no Rockefeller. I don't need 40 post revisions for a post that I've been working on. Like,
Right.
just get rid of it, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so like, that stuff collects in your database and you got to kind of blow it out every once in a while.
I totally agree. And one thing I was noticing on one client's website I was looking at is that the version of PHP is something you should be
Yes.
looking into as well. If you're running an old version of PHP, which is interesting that like the web host would allow you to do that, but having an older version of PHP is something you should definitely look into if you're if you're running a super old setup. It might be something to look into and updating that.
Right. I will say, at the web hosts that I have been fortunate enough to work at, they tend to try to keep the PHP versions that they make available like in line with, at least over the past few years, as that has, as the perception of old versions of PHP has kind of been like, no, this is crappy. We need to get away from letting people continue to do this. I know that Bluehost, never worked there, but I know that Bluehost a few years ago really made this push to get everybody on a more modern version of PHP, and force them up into that. So, really doing uh, a good job of that. It's going to kind of get interesting in the next year or so because even though WordPress and the newer versions of WordPress are compatible with PHP 8, and they're working on making it compatible with PHP 8.1. They're really compatible in that they don't spit back warnings if you run WordPress under the new versions. Like, you're not getting
Hmm.
a lot of the optimizations of PHP 8 and PHP 8.1 if you run your sites under that. Not the way that when people made the jump from PHP 5.6 to PHP 7, that they're like, oh, things are so much faster. You might get a little
Right.
bit of a speed boost, but but I'm not saying don't upgrade to PHP 8. Like, if WordPress runs on it, if your plugins run under it, please, by all means, like, keep pushing, like, your PHP upgrades. But
Right. And that's where a staging server comes into play for all of this stuff, literally all of this stuff. Most staging
absolutely.
servers on most web hosts have caching disabled. That has like all this stuff disabled that you can at least kind of test it with,
Mhm.
and see, how does this site work when it's not being cached, when it's not going through all this extra stuff, right? I mean, am I kind of stepping out of bounds there, or
No, that's absolutely right. I think that, and something that I would maybe like to see from other hosts, or is, and I actually haven't seen a host doing this yet, but I've done this as like a workaround. Yeah, it's great to see what your changes will be without caching on, but there have been a few occasions where fortunately, I'll have like a 5 or 10 site plan at a host, and I will spin up another copy of the site and just like fully use a plugin like Migrate Guru or something like that to move it over to where you can see it running under caching, to actually see, like, okay, so having your caching off is to see what changes are being made and things like that is a good idea. But for the majority of the time, your site is going to be running with caching
cached?
on.
Right.
Yeah. So I would love to see hosts basically give you the option to, like, hey, caching is off for this, but if you want to see it with caching on, like, flip a button and we'll either change the config or we'll make a copy of your site on something that actually has like the same caching config.
Yeah, if you have like that really long query that really jacked up, adding in a whole bunch of stuff, and it runs great cached.
Right.
but it doesn't run great uncached, then yeah, that would be an interesting way of essentially turning on the layers of that onion, for
Yeah.
however it is that that particular web host is doing the various caching that's happening there. Um,
Yeah, actually, I was gonna say you kind of ran into this problem not too long ago. You migrated the water cooler site
yeah.
over to DreamHost, and things are going fine over there. You were running off of a free WP Engine account for quite some
Hmm.
time,
Nine
and you
years.
moved. Yeah, I mean, I was working at WP Engine when we were giving those free accounts away. Like
Right.
I remember, like letting people, but I understand, like, okay, like, you've maybe for a lot of people, you've maybe had your fill of free service, like,
Right.
pay
Right.
up. And you were nice enough to come move over to DreamHost, and I mean, you're paying for your account, and you were happy to give me feedback on the process.
Hmm.
And you said, things are a little slower over here than they are at WP Engine on my site.
Right.
And every site, because of every configuration, it's different.
All
But
different.
I pointed out to you, I said, we're not running object caching in the same way that WP Engine might be running object caching. It's been 5 years, 4.5 years since I've worked at WP Engine, so I can't fully speak to what their stack is now. But
Hmm.
they have some sort of object caching in place, either Memcache or Redis or something, I'm
Right.
sure. And currently on the DreamHost stack, there's no object caching in place.
Mm.
We have a very robust varnish caching layer, but when you're trying to do some of these dynamic things, not having object caching in place can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And that's something that I just I don't normally talk about work on the show,
Sure.
but I'm trying to push. Hopefully, I can to convince everybody that object caching is absolutely something we must be doing, and should get enabled for our customers quickly, especially as more and more people are spinning up WooCommerce sites, which have
Right.
dynamic,
Hmm.
um, so that's something that is definitely important if you want to um, start doing that.
Yeah.
So I want to say, gosh, I wish I could remember who it was. It was at WordCamp Santa Clarita,
Oh
and
yeah.
one of the other speakers there. This was 2019, I want to
Hmm.
say. Um, One of the other speakers there was also from a host, and basically they said one of the best ways to see how well your host performs is to go and move your site to another host.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Which is also just in general, if you feel like your site is pretty dang optimized and you move your site to another web host and it works better, hey, maybe you want to stick there. Why not?
Absolutely.
Because
And
they're all using a different recipe to make the HTML spit out at some point the end
right.
result.
Yeah. I mean, you look at what Carl Alexander is doing with, I'm going to butcher this name, YMIR, Ymir. It's a Nordic name, I believe. Um, I mean, he has a full, like, serverless WordPress setup that manages to serve pages very quickly. Everything like runs like at the time of query and everything else. He did a really interesting interview. I'll make sure we get it in the show notes with Bob over on Do the Woo.
Oh yeah.
Um, him and Till Cruz, I believe, was in that show, who does some really great stuff with Redis caching. He comes to Redis caching from Redis. He's not just a WordPress developer who kind of knows Redis, which is how a lot of the other Redis plugins have been built so far. So it's like, oh, great, we actually have somebody who knows Redis first and then came to WordPress as an interest. So and his Redis caching plugin is Object Cache Pro. I think I know that Pagely includes that for their customers. The license on, let's look up Object Cache Pro. You get to listen to how loud my keyboard is.
Hey, you paid good money for that loudness, all right?
Absolutely. Object Cache Pro comes out to, I mean, it's a Redis caching plugin for WordPress, $95 a month.
Wow.
Now you look at Pagely's pricing, and I'm sure that they don't pay $95 a month for Object Cache Pro, but but you pay. I think we were talking about it the other day before they even got acquired, that Pagely's pricing is $199 a month for their cheapest, their least expensive plan. I mean, the cost of Object Cache Pro, I'm sure, is getting baked into there. It's got to be like,
yeah.
A host like DreamHost that sells DreamPress for $15 a month, we might not be able to afford Object Cache Pro.
Right.
We might.
There's alternatives. Right.
He actually makes a free plugin that's in the repository. Redis Object Cache, I want to say. See, this is where having Say and Steve comes in handy, because they can talk and talk while I'm typing on something. Okay.
Yeah, this guy right here.
Yeah. It also runs very well. It uses a completely different code base than Object Cache Pro. So Object Cache Pro is specifically written like differently than Redis Object Cache. So it's not like you're getting, the free version of the plugin that just has some things disabled.
Jim in the chat says that Mediavine makes a theme that's lightning fast without the need of an external cache, but works better with one. And let's say it's Trellis.
Okay.
Something to look into.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know that people are very much about their themes. And they might not necessarily. I know that now that we're getting into the block editor and things like that you're people might be able to move around with their themes a little bit more. They might be willing to try some stuff out if their blocks are going to stay generally the same as they migrate around. They might be willing to try some stuff out more. They might be able to let things get a little more weird, as it were.
But that does bring up a good point in that not all of these themes are created the same. Like, no. You could have a theme that was not built properly and it has a ton of weird stuff going on.
Theme forest.
Right. But you have one of those themes that just isn't working well, and no matter what you do to that website, you move it, you change stuff, you remove all the plugins, you add every bit of caching you can to it, no matter what, just it doesn't work right. That's something you need to look into as well, and it might be something that you may want to test and just be like, something's not working right with this thing. Even asking people, someone who's in the know. This happens all the time at these either WordCamps as well as WordPress meetups. The person comes in, they go like, I'm using insert, theme name here, and the whole room just kind of shudders like, oh my gosh, clutching pearls and whatnot. And we're all just like, dude, like, you really don't need to, is it the 7? Like one of those like types of plugins, you're just like, you really don't need to use that play or that theme. It's like, you should probably try something different. There's a whole
Right.
bunch of those that come up that you just hear it and you're just like, oh wow, really? You're still using that? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So someone's still using Revolution Slider.
Right, exactly.
No, I ran into this really interesting theme forest theme the other day. I cannot remember the name of the theme for the life of me, but it included this page builder that I had never heard of.
Oh, fun.
Have you ever heard of tag div?
No.
Right,
Tag div.
tag div. And it seemed maybe purpose built for the actual.
It looks legit.
Looks can be deceiving.
Right. It looks legit. It looks like it spits out HTML.
Oh, it absolutely spits out HTML. But the HTML
I don't want to make it look like we're endorsing it or anything.
right. The HTML it spits out, it's mostly fine, but it was just slow.
Boy.
I was helping somebody work through this issue where they were like, hey, my page builder is super slow. And I go in expecting, like, okay, well, maybe they're running WP Bakery. Maybe they're running, Beaver Builder and have been at it for just a really long time. Or they're running a bunch of, weird extensions on top of Divi or Element, or have I named all of the page builders yet?
You're pretty
I'm just
close,
trying to, I'm just trying to fill time. No, but so then I open it up. I hit the little like open page builder. Like I log in as the user they created for me. I open the page builder, and I'm like, what the hell is tag div? And then I try to make a change to the page, and they were right. It was slow. It was adding a period to the page and then hitting save, and basically it spun until PHP timed out.
Oh boy.
And they were running regular plugins otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But
Jeez.
I had some indexes. I've told you about the indexes that I use. Over a few years, I have created some indexes that help with posts and post meta lookups, things like that really have helped make things quicker. But I had to apply things very carefully, because this was one of those customers that if their site went down, it was, help, I'm making thousands of dollars an hour on my site. Please help me get it back up. And
Right.
it wasn't an e-commerce site. It was just a very popular news site, and couldn't afford to be down because what they were making off of AdWords. I'm glad that I have ad block running on my site or on my browsers, because I turned it off and there were 27 ads that loaded on the page.
Wow.
Like, they're going real hard on Google Ads. But they're making a ton of money from it. So,
yeah. Well,
get the bag.
Yeah, and that man, another good point. Extra stuff outside of the hosting side of things. So you have external forces that are being applied to this website. It could be a slow server on a CDN. It could be it's some JavaScript that's being hosted someplace that's waiting for a thing that it's trying to pull from. It
Yeah.
could be an ad. Like
Right.
there's so many in ads, especially ad networks, and ad networks that are ad networks of ad networks. You can go 3 or 4 layers deep in iframes until you finally get to this one image that's going to be displayed that has a ridiculous amount of tracking on it, and every layer going back up has ridiculous tracking going into it. So all that JavaScript is just stuff that is slowing it down, and
Hmm.
also could potentially be blocking the painting on the page. So as it's
Right.
going down and trying to do it, if it's not built properly, you could have it where it just stops right in the middle of it loading, waiting for something to load till it can continue. And those are things that just come up and something you
Yeah.
need to be aware of depending on how your website's set up and how these external things that are being pulled in. One in particular is like if you use an outside commenting service, comments are being pulled in from iframes or being pulled in from JavaScript or jQuery or what have you. Like these are
Right.
all extra layers of stuff that need to be pulled in to make the
Hmm.
entire website load up and be, quote unquote, functional.
Right. I am really glad that I never did this, but I want to say like 8 years ago, I was considering pitching a talk about outsourcing particular parts of your website to third-party services. And it was from a performance angle, just like, hey, if you don't want to worry about related posts, or doing anything like that, like, then you know what, have a third party service, maybe not like Outbrain or any of those ones that give you the wild gross toenail pictures that tell you that you have like cancerous diabetes of the butt or something, but uh, just the worst things to make your readers look at.
Mm-hmm.
But just kind of like farming that stuff out, farming stuff like your search out to Elasticsearch, especially if you have a site where there are a lot of people searching for things. A WooCommerce site that has people looking for products and things like that. The 10up ElasticPress plugin also not only farms out search stuff, it farms queries out to Elasticsearch. It's like a drop-in replacement for WP Query. So you can
Ah.
use that as a little bit of like extra, as long as your Elasticsearch server is a little more local. It doesn't have a lot of latency between your Elasticsearch server and, so like if you're running your site on AWS or it's AWS hosted and you want to spin up your own Elasticsearch server, that's something that you can absolutely do.
Mm.
Um, and then lean on 10up's plugin to help you speed up, like as a drop-in for queries. Things like that. But the more I look at farming that stuff out to third-party services, the more I'm like, nope, like just make it local. Like just
Right.
try to, like, there's that whole push inside of WordPress to, instead of like depending on Google fonts, it's like, no, let's download, because these fonts are open source fonts. Let's download a copy of the font to like the plugin or theme or whatever's using it and
Yep.
load it up locally instead of worrying about if Google CDN is going to be fast.
Right.
People who put the Facebook tracking pixel on their site, like, okay, that's great. You're sending Facebook all that data. Why would you want to do that? But, you do you. I'm not going to judge. However, you have to take into account that, is Facebook's server like all right today?
Right.
When they had that outage, about a month or so back, there were people who were just like, my site is loading so slowly. And it's because they put the pixel or they put the little like buttons on their site. Like I have said this for years. How many people actually use those like buttons on a site? Jason, do you ever, hit the little Twitter icon to
No.
tweet? Yeah, you go up into the URL, you copy that link, and then you drop it into Twitter. Like that little button is supposed to save you time, but all it's doing is funneling that data back to Twitter, back to Facebook. Like you're giving them value.
Yeah.
For what? To make your site slower? Fuck that.
Exactly.
I had
exactly.
Sorry for the F-bomb. Put the explicit tag on the episode. But
oh darn.
Oh no.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And we're running out of time. But what I will tell you is that look at all those things and see how much of those things that you have on your website are actually adding value. And if they are adding value, figure out if you can do that. Like you said, do that locally. And if you can't, maybe it's not adding value. Get rid of it.
Right.
People like clean websites.
Nobody needs to know how many likes you have on a post. Like how many people have tweeted about the post. Instagram tried an experiment not too long ago to just let you like a photo and not show you how many likes that the photo actually has. All you know is that you like the photo and that's it. And people didn't care for it. Oh, I wonder why, because there's no way to stroke their ego and not see their likes. But
it's that value proposition, that value piece. Is that thing something that's valuable to the website and making it work? I don't know.
Right.
Well, hey man, thank you for hanging out. I appreciate it. I'm going to say
of
thank you
course
for the folks that are watching this stuff live, as well as watching and listening to this stuff later. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this content, please share it with somebody. We would really appreciate that. It means a lot to us. And if you're listening to us on a podcast place, listen to us on that podcast, wherever it is, and leave us a review. We would absolutely love it. Talk to y'all later. You have a good one. Bye-bye. Speaking of subscribing, if you're not subscribed to this content, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can subscribe to us as a podcast. And if you want to, and you listen to your podcast on Spotify, you can do it on Spotify as well. So feel free to go do that. Go to WPwatercooler.com/subscribe or click subscribe wherever it is you're consuming this content. Bye.